Welcome to You've Only Come to Hear United. No messing about. Manchester United versus Liverpool. It's been a shocker today. It has, but after the last few years, these things aren't unexpected anymore. We didn't deserve anything from the game. Let's have a quick recap before we get into the sort of pros and cons of things. So the commentary team, they were already getting their digs in before kickoff. We had Dallow's the only one of the back three there without a Dutch backstory. Was that really necessary? I don't think so. Then we had a graphic of Marcus Rashford come up in the left-hand corner showing his minutes so far this season. His shots, 0, and his offsides, apparently 3 so far. Again, a second early low blow before kickoff, and it really did sort of set the tone for the viewer at home anyway. So we started the first few minutes on the front foot. We looked very bright. That was over very, very soon, unfortunately. Far too easy to get through for the disallowed goal. We got a little bit of luck in there, but we didn't make the most of it. We were rushing things at times for the first sort of 25 minutes in attack. Definitely our own worst enemy for the first goal. An awful pass from Casemiro. He was far from the only one giving the ball away, though. We let in another back post header again as well, which kind of stings after the way we lost the game last week. Casemiro, unfortunately, he was weak for the second. It looked like a bit of a foul to me in the build-up, but he really should have been able to stay on his feet there and hold his ground. The way it was going with the yellow cards we were picking up, it wouldn't have surprised me if there was a red card in the game as we were heading into half-time, so I am glad we managed to avoid that, looking for small mercies. I did wonder if Erik ten Hag was going to be brave enough to take off Casemiro at half-time, and I think the fact he did and brought on Toby Collier in a game of that magnitude in the situation we were in, I think that spoke volumes. Kobbie Mainoo unfortunately robbed for the third just after Gary Neville had said how good he was at receiving the ball in tight areas and how much more suited he'd be to sort of dropping back in there than Casemiro. Bang on cue, gives the ball away. 3-0 down. Almost straight after that, there was nearly a fourth. Then a minute or two later, Salah also had a shot deflected just wide. Rashford was still on past the hour mark. It started to feel a little bit odd at this point. You could have taken off a lot of the team, really, to be fair. Knowing Ahmad was on the bench, you're thinking at any moment he's going to be on for Rashford, surely. Then Garnacho comes off, and that did not go down well at all. But Ahmad came on and he had you wondering why he wasn't starting the game. He suddenly looked to be our most threatening player, although it really should have been at least 4-0. Soberslime missed a golden opportunity for Liverpool by trying to overcomplicate things, but it made no difference in the end. It pains me to say this, but it was a comfortable 3-0 victory for Liverpool. There were some pros. If you look really, really hard, you can see a few tiny bright shoots in there. Dalot early on looked willing to get crosses in with his left, which we saw him put an excellent ball in last week. I'd given him some criticism previously for looking like he wanted to come back onto his right too much, but no, we're not seeing those sort of horrible problems we get with Anthony where he's obsessed with using his better foot. Dalot's taken very well to playing at fullback. He's played there quite a lot for us, but in the last 2 games now, he's looking like he's attempting to imitate an authentic left back, and he's given us some proper width out there, and he may have some longevity in that position, potentially. He's looking less and less like someone filling in that position, and he's really getting used to it and making it his own. Obviously, we want to see Shaw and Malacia come back, sort of more traditional, conventional left-footed left backs. But with the injuries they've picked up quite consistently, it's nice to know that Dalot seems to be a viable option out there. I thought Matthijs de Ligt looked generally pretty solid. He did seem to fade a bit as the game went on. We saw that crunching tackle in the second half where he picked up a booking for taking somebody out. But generally, he looked good, and I think when he's got more minutes under his belt and his fitness sort of reaches a higher level, I definitely think he's going to be a mainstay in the team. He did look really good, and he got the fans on his side a few times with some really good tackles. But like I say, faded a bit as the game went on, but there were promising signs there. Joshua Zirkzee didn't have a good game overall, but it was good to see he was willing to get in those threatening areas. He's been somebody who's recognised as a striker who likes to drop deeper. We've been told not to expect big numbers from him, but looking at the areas of the pitch he was getting in today, knowing you've got Ruud van Nistelrooy to coach him behind the scenes, you'd expect him to get a decent number of goals this season. But we'll see how that evolves as the season goes on. Ahmad came on and showed why he really should have started the game as well. He was very, very bright, and it was a really good cameo from him. And he wasn't on the pitch, obviously, as long as he was against Brighton. And he did get a goal last week, but I think he played in the sort of 25 minutes or so he was on the pitch today. He looked very good, better than last week for me. The cons, well, Ahmad didn't start. And why was this a negative? Well, first of all, obviously, you lose Ahmad's threat. He had more touches in the box in a really short amount of time after he came on compared to any other of our players throughout the entire game, which really said a lot. The reason for me it was such a negative was because with Ahmad not starting, it inevitably meant, well, that means Rashford's probably starting with Garnacho. That's exactly what was happening, and it has created a Rashford situation. Did Rashford deserve the boos that he got? No, he didn't. He didn't play well, but he shouldn't have been playing in the first place. He hasn't been playing well. He hasn't started the season well, and the manager has ultimately picked a player not in form. And I kind of get it from the perspective that Marcus Rashford has had really good games against Liverpool. He's caused Trent Alexander-Arnold multiple problems in the past. So I did wonder going into this game if he thought he might have played Rashford thinking he's going to turn up against Liverpool today. But he didn't, and he just kept him on. And it did get really, for me, he was a little bit uncomfortable after a while. You know, when I say, by the way, the boos Rashford got, it was more so the crowd were booing the substitution. They were booing the fact that Garnacho was the one coming off for Ahmad, but the boos were aimed at the fact that they wanted Rashford off, and that's going to translate to him. He's low on confidence at the moment, and it's not going to help him to hear that. He doesn't need that right now. The manager shouldn't have played an out-of-form player from the start. It would have probably suited Rashford much more if we needed something from the game to be the saviour in this one, to maybe be the one who came off the bench and looked to turn the tide for us. There'd have been nothing for him to lose if we'd have, been in a similar situation and been 2 or 3-0 down, and he came on and he made something happen. Instead, if anything, Ahmad's reputation has been bolstered by the fact that he didn't play in that game, and now it's going to be very difficult for the manager to start Marcus Rashford in the next game. Another obvious con was the renewed negative feeling around Casemiro. Was he the only one playing badly? Absolutely not. We saw Kobbie Mainoo robbed for the third goal after Gary Neville's commentator's jinx. Martinez's passing was really off. There were lots of players giving the ball away, dribbling into dead ends, not controlling the ball properly. The communication was off. It was almost as if this could have been the first game back after pre-season against a team who were much further down the line. But we seem to have gone backwards, if anything, after a performance last week which was pretty decent despite the result. Now you look at Casemiro in this two-man midfield that we're attempting to play, and now without the extra protection of Mason Mount lining up alongside Fernandes, giving us that extra midfield presence, there's almost a false front two. Almost. Casemiro was just so exposed. If you play him as the base of a three-man midfield, I think you're going to get a lot more security there for him and from him. I think you simplify his job, but asking him to do what Erik ten Hag's been asking him to do, I don't think he's got that in the tank anymore. Especially you get it at the elite level against teams like Liverpool, Manchester City, for example. But we'll see. It's still early in the season and things can change. But I think if Casemiro is going to play in there, you want a couple of midfielders a lot closer to him, a la when we used to place Paul Scholes in the sort of later part of his career. We might have a Darren Fletcher in there. And, for example, I think we've had Phil Neville, Ji-Sung Park in the past. In midfield threes, I'm thinking of the days we used to go away to Arsenal and we'd pack that middle, but Scholes would need legs sometimes. He'd need people around him to put the hard yards in so he could be the more creative influence in there. And although Casemiro obviously doesn't necessarily bring the creative influence, he's definitely someone who positionally, if he's allowed just to focus on the defensive part of his game, he can monitor that part of the pitch great. But you couldn't then have in front of him, for example, Mainu and Fernandes. It wouldn't work. Fernandes is not going to have the response. He's not going to shoulder that sort of responsibility that we'd need from a more disciplined player. In that you could probably have. You could have Casemiro sitting, and you could probably have Ugarte and Mainu in front of him, and give Mainu a bit more attacking sort of freedom. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see as the weeks go on. We are still short in midfield. If Ugarte picks up an injury once he's up and running, we're going to need Casemiro still this season because we didn't bring anybody else in the transfer window. In terms of the attack, it was as poor as the defence, and there were a few better chances late on, a couple of good balls in from Rashford and big chances for Xerxes to have at least pulled a goal back for us. But the worrying thing for me was how much of a one-dimensional attack we had. We looked like we were just waiting for the counter-attack constantly. It's like we needed to be more proactive. We needed to be more on the front foot, as we were in the first few minutes of the game. But that faded really quick, and that's something that's really got to change when we come back after the international break. If we're looking like a reactive counter-attacking team against Southampton, then something has gone horribly wrong in the team structure, in the team setup. What are reasonable expectations for this season now? Well, after that result, I think fourth place is the best we're probably we're going to get this year. That becomes almost our title to go for, which is sickening to say, because you just get that echoes of the Arsene Wenger Arsenal years, where we all took the mick out of the fact that was seen as an achievement for Arsenal every year, just getting into the Champions League. And we're finding ourselves very close to a point where we'd be quite relieved to get into the Champions League every year. Now, for me, I go into a season thinking, right, can we win the league this year? Some years I think, it's going to be more difficult than others, but I think that always has to be the target of Manchester United. And 3 games into the season, having lost 2 already, with some tricky fixtures coming up, the league feels gone already. Now, other fans of other clubs would laugh at the fact that some United fans maybe even considered it was a possibility to begin with, but that's the way we're wired, especially if, like me, you grew up watching a lot of, so the 90s was your introduction to Manchester United, and you're watching a lot of that football, and you get used to winning things. Well, it's not. You don't go into a season thinking, oh yeah, we'll go for the Champions League this year. So yeah, if Ranieri came in after what had happened before, if he got Champions League and a trophy, which he did, you can consider that a success. It was more of a success within the context of the situation. But in terms of the expectations of Manchester United, no, that's not a success. It's not at all. Winning the league is a success, and anything less than that in the Premier League isn't. You can have contextual success, and you can monitor our progress. You can go, fair enough, we understand that, but you have to win the title at Manchester United. There's no two ways about that. I think there's a lot of pressure on Manuel Ugarte when we come back after the international break now. I think there'll be some expectations of that. You kind of hear the way people are talking about the situation, that he's going to come in and it's going to be all right because he's going to cover every blade of grass. He's going to be able to move around like Casemiro can't. I think if he doesn't start doing that straight away, you're going to see some drop faces amongst some of the fan base thinking, well, what are we going to do now? There's more than enough people out there with a level head knowing that's not going to be the case. But it has worried me listening to the way some people have talked about the influence they're expecting Ugarte to have. As mentioned not too long ago, I think the final sort of sting in the tail with that result was, it's what I mentioned last week, and it's what I didn't want it to have to come back to. But when you've lost 2 out of 3 and you've got games against 2 away games, first against Southampton and Palace, and then amongst the next batch, you've got the likes of Villa, there's Chelsea in there, Spurs, West Ham away, not in that order. It's realistic we could definitely lose a couple more games within that spell, and then you can find yourself getting up to sort of 9-10 games this season, and you could have lost 4, maybe 5 already. Obviously, I'm hoping it doesn't come down to that, but you're looking at where other teams appear to be and where we appear to be. The international break's going to interrupt our sort of development. That doesn't bode well. After the break, as fans, I think we want and need to see a performance. I just think 3 points won't be enough to satisfy us, especially against Southampton and Palace. Palace are a very good team now, but after what happened last season, there's got to be some sense of putting things right. Are we capable of that? I don't know at the moment. And I think a lot of fans don't know. Well, that's what we want to see. I think the big thing for Erik ten Hag in terms of the way Ineos will be looking at him at the moment is just to get that 3 points no matter their performance. And the same against Palace. I think maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world for him if he got a win and a draw. Not great for it. I think the fans will still be on his back, more so if we drop points in either of those games. But a win and a draw is not too bad. And then I think we've got Aston Villa after that. And then if you can go and win that, not so bad. If we fail to pick up 3 points in either of the next 2 games, then that heat is really going to be turned up. And it does feel really ridiculous to be saying this so early in the season. But, I don't think Ineos would have been looking at those first 3 fixtures and have anticipated 2 defeats out of the first 3. I don't think there's any club that sort of aspirations of finishing in the higher echelons of the table who would be no one's going to be satisfied with that, but who could in any way be comfortable with that. Probably wouldn't be so bad if we didn't have a tough run of games coming up. So fingers crossed we can start to turn things around. Anyway, that's all for today. You could take that game apart and look at a lot more aspects of it, but it was overall, I think it's something now not to dwell on too much for fans. It's horrible not having a game so soon afterwards to try and put things right, but we are going to have to wait now a couple of weeks until the international break's finished and hopefully look forward to some better performances, and we've at least got the debut of Manuel Ugarte to look forward to, hopefully in the not too distant future. Although based on what Erik ten Hag said later after the game about him not being Harry Potter and that Ugarte could need weeks or even months, he said, to get up to speed, that was a little bit concerning. I don't think it'll come down to that though. I think he will at least have some part in the next game against Southampton. Anyway, that is all from me for now. If you like what you heard, please drop a like below, press that button, press the subscribe button, and I will speak to you all soon.